everyone, and welcome to another episode of HR and Payroll 2.0. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Julie, how are you?
Doing great today. Thanks, Pete. It's getting
Awesome.
cold, though.
Yes, I was going to ask you before we started. Are you freezing? Because I'm cold here in Atlanta, so yeah, I would imagine you're probably very cold, right?
And yep, I'll be shoveling snow this weekend.
Oh, good for you. Fun. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It is.
Okay. Hey, look, we have a super packed episode. There is more news than I think we probably didn't even bring it all in. I think we discussed there are things we had to leave out. We have tons of product updates from the events this week, a lot of HCM's events this week, UKG and Ceridian. And I know, Julie, you've got a number of payroll and benefit focused, no pun intended, benefit focus is included, but things that are focused on benefits and payroll were in the news. So do you want to do the honors, Julie, and get us started with that? And then we'll jump into our topic at the end, which is going to be on org readiness.
For sure. So let's start with a few market updates, Pete. I wanted to lead with an announcement that Cognizant made recently that it was acquiring OSV, OneSource Virtual's Workday professional services and AMS practice. And so I don't know if folks caught it. It was just after Halloween and just before, this contentious voting election day, stuff. But if you did catch wind of it, you might actually be wondering who bought what and what the heck is going on there. And so I thought it would make sense to emphasize at least that what Cognizant bought is not all of OneSource Virtual. It's a part, and it's the technical part or the technical solutions part of their business. So if you're an OSV client or you're thinking about OSV, their ongoing BPaaS business is still, with them. It's more the deployment activities and about 400 Workday consultants that go with that Cognizant bought. And then I'll just leave a teaser here, that if you want more details or you're looking for some more information, I will have a blog out in the next day or so, if it's not already out by the time you listen to this. And so check out the blog for quite a bit more details on how this affects buyers, how this affects current clients, and a lot more of the details.
Yeah, this one, back to your point about did people notice? Yeah, our world definitely noticed. Where I work. So this one piqued everyone's interest. And I'll be honest with you, this one surprised me. I had to do a double take at the fact that they broke apart, right? And I think, they moved off probably what was the richer side of their business over to Cognizant, which now pairs up with what they bought in 2020 from Collaborative, right? So
absolutely,
very, very strong Workday practice over there now. So now OSV is squarely focused on cloud-based HR services, which as most people know is payroll, benefits, data admin, that sort of thing, and some F&A stuff, right? Procurement.
That's right. They've been moving in that direction.
This is interesting. This is interesting. So we'll see what happens. I would imagine that OneSource, I'm going to assume they might have been for sale, and it looks like this was probably the best path. So yeah, we'll see what happens from here. But congrats to them and some new branding. I don't know if you saw, they have some very fresh branding over there.
That's right. So, and I think that it does re-raise that purchase of collaborative solutions that happened. It got squeaked in right at COVID, right in 2020, and so there hasn't been a lot of noise around since then. That at least not that caught my attention. So.
Cool,
very combination.
We'll have to see where that goes, right?
Absolutely. So I've got another one for you, Pete, and that is Voya Financial is acquiring Benefits Focus.
Yep.
So this one, I think, might be a head scratcher for some folks, because where we've seen Benefit Focus and a lot of the health and welfare administrative solutions align with other administrative solutions, here we have, the alignment more with the retirement activities. And so, all cloud-based, the cloud-based benefit technology was kind of the draw or the appeal, but putting retirement and the health and welfare administration activities back together in kind of the TBO arena under one umbrella seems to be what they're going for.
Yeah. I this is interesting too, right? I mean, Voya is continuing to be that sort of one-stop shop of all of those things, right? And they're very focused on that workforce product. So fun fact, I actually was one of the first people to be certified in Benefit Focus's. They had tried to create an SI program back in late, like maybe 2013, 14 in my Deloitte days. And I actually worked on that with them on that and got very familiar with their product and their deployment methodologies and like how they run the organization. And it's been neat to see them grow. So yeah, it looks like they're finding a home and going to get some further investment. So good stuff. This consolidation, I think, is what we're going to continue to see as firms get together and strengthen each other.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
for my third market update of choice, I'm going to take us over to Europe. And here we have SD Works again showing up in the news.
Surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. This time they've moved off of Ireland and acquired a Barcelona, Spain-based company called Integro, which produces, of course, their payroll software and software group that has about 150,000 pay slips for the Spain market. And so they are just continue their role, right? Adding to their footprint of engines that they own, and payroll business, and Barcelona, Spain is where they headed next.
Yeah. No, this is not surprising. I mean, this is on brand for SD Works. This is what they do, right? They acquire and build out their portfolio, and they have a lot of stuff. And yeah, this I think for them, it really builds on an existing office they had there, I know of. And I think it now brings them to about 25, maybe even headed towards 30 countries, possibly. I need at least 24 in-house, so to speak, through, really their pan-European focus. And I think, if you're familiar with SD Works, this is actually one of their partners. So this is a very familiar, made sense acquisition, right?
Yeah, that's a great thing to point out. Oftentimes that has been their MO, right?
Yeah.
They get comfortable and they work with somebody first, and then they kind of join the fold. So I'm going to stop there for the market updates and thinking maybe, Pete, I ought to turn it over to you because we had a couple of events, big ticket events, and some product updates coming out of that. So why don't you take us through some of that stuff?
Yeah, it was a bummer. I mean, the first time in many years I wasn't in these events, tweeting and getting updates. But yeah, two of the major HCMs had big events last week. Also, Workday Rising is happening, this week in Stockholm. But UKG started it off, I think, about a day before Ceridian, if I'm not mistaken. And the day before their event kicked off, they started off with a announcement of an acquisition of Corbett, a UK-based workforce planning solution that really helps you model and forecast staffing needs into the future. So I think that's a really nice fit for obviously their strength of workforce management, HCM, and that. Just that focus on creating more agility through insights and capability, right? Around your processes, I think is where they're looking at. So this was a nice acquisition. I don't want to call it a fold in, but it almost kind of is. I think it's a functionality and capability that probably is going to fit in nicely with their workforce management, suite. Now, one of the things I want to point out, right? We're going to talk a lot here about product announcements, but one of the things I think is important to emphasize with UKG is the product retirements. We all know about the horrible ransomware situation that happened. I hate that it happens to any vendor. I think UKG is probably the one of the vendors that doesn't deserve it. No one deserves it, but they have handled it as best they can. I believe it seems like they've come through it. But, when you look at the retirement timetable they announced for a handful of their solutions, I noticed a number of the ones that were the culprits for the ransomware problem are being put to sleep, so to speak. Your Kronos private cloud option, which is dangerous. Private cloud is dangerous from a security perspective. You're not getting that security at scale when you go to a public cloud offering like a Google or an AWS or something where they're chronically orbiting their world and securing it, right, for all the businesses globally. They're also doing away with Telestaff. Workforce Central. All of the Workforce Central products are now obviously going to be migrating over to Dimensions. So they are cleaning up that portfolio and doing away with some of those older on-prem, just outdated solutions. So if you have one of those solutions, hopefully you're having conversations and you're talking about adopting the new ones. But I think this is a positive step for their portfolio and their customers.
For sure. The cleanup and sunsetting is always the hardest thing for anyone to get around to, not only on the provider side, but on the client side, right? So,
and as
dirty work, it has to be done.
No, it does. And as we saw from the fallout, right, you saw some of the news articles of, cities and municipalities that were using it in businesses. It's interesting how many big organizations were still clunking around with this old technology. And so I think it was probably a wake up call for those folks, but also for UKG. And it's good to see they're doing a little bit of cleanup and getting everything, tightened up so that we don't have that in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
But now new products, right? UKG, man, they really went for it. There was a lot here. Kudos to them, man. They have a great team. They come up with some very innovative stuff. They've launched a new I'll call it an agility enabling platform. It's called Flex by UKG. Interesting branding given the Paychex HCM platform with the same name.
Right.
But it's really a new technology platform that is all about connecting and building applications through a service mesh architecture. And I won't go into that. I'm not an expert at it, but basically it makes it easier for your application to pass data back and forth to other applications and service calls of the data. And it makes it easier for you to integrate and fundamentally, I don't want to use the word customize, but create those add-ons and fill gaps and do things the way you need to do it without having to have major IT spend and infrastructure changes, right? So really good stuff. Obviously, like I said, service mesh architecture design, it's very, very ease of sharing data, ease of application integration, more it'll speed up innovation for those firms that are wanting to kind of innovate and do some things differently. And it comes with three primary pieces, right? It's got the Flex Fabric, which is an AI-enabled layer, an ML layer that will give those insights and nudges to employees. They've got the Flex Flow, which is the API framework, which moves obviously and moves your data, connects these solutions together. And then, of course, Flex Dev, which is a set of tools and services to help them in a low-code kind of environment, which, as you know, what you're seeing more of is organizations. You see this with ADP Next Gen. I would say you see it with Workday, others. They're making it very drag and drop, very simple to connect and customize. If you, I hate using that word, but really kind of using it to develop the things that you need to do. I think always of the Julie, you'll recognize this. You go into an organization, you do due diligence, and in payroll, there's always in the big companies, especially the ones on legacy systems, they've always got a couple of access databases that are lurking around that they can't live without.
That's right.
I always look at low code, no code, and microservices in that context of being able to build something, an app or something, and connect it on to fill a white space for you without having to have, Bob in the basement maintaining some access database that keeps everybody getting their tips or whatever the outside the system solution is. So think of it as customization, but you're not customizing. You're really rapidly connecting and maybe making things work together so that it fits your environment.
That's right. Yep. And I think they're trying to fill a gap, right? So then, the number one reason is folks are moving, into a cloud portfolio of solutions for not taking the integrated suite, is you want this robust customization and feature set that providers, these providers bring. But the disadvantage, which is something that folks try to avoid when they stick with an integrated suite, is the challenge of integration, just how messy that gets. So not surprising at all to see such a focus in this area, and we'll see if it pays off.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big announcement, they are bringing the Great Places to Work for data closer. As you know, they made that acquisition over a year ago now. They are bringing their data closer together with the data that is in UKG's HCM products, and coupling the sentiment analysis capability from Xandr, which was they got Xandr, years ago in the Kanjoya acquisition. And really giving those insights around DE&I and culture and that sort of thing. So this is really exciting. This is the richness of GPTW and what UKG bought it for, was to activate those insights to help companies have great places to work for. So excited to see that come into life and productized. Awesome. They also announced a big expanded collaboration with Microsoft, right? They are going to go deeper with embedded in the flow of work sort of experiences. They'll use Flex, of course, that they just launched to embed UKG dimensions and shift swapping and shift actions into Teams. So while you're in Teams, you can actually do your shift management and that sort of thing, and have already actually integrated chatbots and that sort of things into Teams by way of for communications with UKG Dimensions platform. But I think you're going to see a lot more of those use cases to come, and I think Viva is going to play a role here, right? The employee workplace experience platform is really growing, and so that'll deepen also.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Anything
Nope,
else there?
that's it. Nope,
No?
that's it. I know you're on a roll. Keep going.
Yeah, we got more. We got more. I told you, UKG was packed, right? Startup ecosystem. They started a similar to the Workday Innovations is what I would innovations portfolio is what I would liken it to. Basically, they've put aside obviously an investment to curate emerging solutions and startups, right? To bring them in and incentivize them to create and work on fuel their projects in the HCM space, but and integrate them and leverage them in connection with the UKG platform and ecosystem. So that's great. I love seeing that, these little sort of incubators that are bringing along these differentiated solutions that can maybe eventually become part of, or grow to something bigger, or maybe become part of their home investor. So and then lastly, a culture focused partner network. So they've kind of created, now I'll tell you, UKG is one of the best with their partners. They've got a really rich partner program. They do a really good job of that. They always have, both for channels and for delivering additional services and deployments, but they do a great job. But now they're really kind of along that lines of their GPTW theme, great places to work. They're curating a group of strategic partners that are aligned to that data and that concept and the methodologies that it offers, as well as the familiarity and capability with the UKG LifeWork tech package of software that they have. So I think that's really interesting, right? It's bringing together organizations that they feel are specialists in their solutions and their methodologies to help customers advance themselves, culturally and from a DE&I sort of perspective. So that's really good stuff. I love always looking at UKG's roadmap.
Yeah, and it does kind of fit like where they came from in the very, very beginning, right? With their peeps and the culture has always been such a big part of their growth and their story. And maybe as you make the transition to the other big event, which was just down the street, speaking of culture, I think, while it was either convenient or inconvenient to folks that both of these fierce competitors had their conferences with some overlap in Vegas. And I had heard some stories that they were, literally right down the strip from each other, one at the Mandalay Bay and one at the Wynn. And it made it maybe convenient for analysts or for partners who wanted to cover both, but also set themselves up for a rivalry down the strip, and with things that were banners hanging and lights flashing in Vegas style, right? As the two.
Oh yeah, yeah. And that's happened, right? That happened a few months ago. We talked about that, where a lot of these had overlapped. So yeah, it almost is a competition for who's going to get butts in the seats to come see their. Obviously you're going to always get your captive audience of users, but the prospects, right? Where are they going to show up? Are they going to come to yours or the competitors? So
absolutely.
We'll call it the strip wars, right? The Vegas strip wars, right?
Yeah. So take us to the other end of the strip, Pete. Take us down to Ceridian Insights.
Yeah. So our friends, Ceridian, right? Tons of updates again for Dayforce, right? HCM is important, obviously, right? We can see this, and the investments are huge, and the proliferation of just capability just keeps coming. But again, packed update from Dayforce and Ceridian. Tons around the employee experience, like a new employee experience hub. They announced mobile benefits enrollment. I'll be honest, I thought they had that, but I guess not. Dayforce guides, they brought in, some more, again, journey sort of focused capabilities. In the talent space, they've also, now deployed a skills engine. I think everyone's kind of gotten there with that. A new career explorer, which is interesting, that leverages machine learning and really pulls off of the skills engine to recommend opportunities and really kind of help curate employees or navigate them towards their interest and goals and fit them for their skill set into that that path. And then also a new agile organization management tool, which gives extended sort of workforce management capability to both regular workers, but also contingent workers. And then, of course, a new integration studio, which, as we all know, again, just talking about kind of extensibility earlier, microservices, everybody's looking to connect everything to HCM, right? It's very, very important. It's the launch pad. So packed pieces from them there. You were going to say something, Julie. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you about middle of the list. You were talking again about the skills,
Yeah.
and I just heard inklings of things that will actually help their clients to think about talent mobility and the internal movement and placement of talent and finding opportunities, and that's where everyone's head is at these days, right? So,
Yeah, it is.
so Ceridian clients, I'm sure will be very excited to learn that they're making some tangible steps in that direction.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you, you think about where they're headed, where they're from, and where they're headed, right? They were a down market solution, and they have very much moved up market. They have their sights squarely set on the large multinational buyer, right? You can see that in this roadmap. You can see it in the leadership they've brought in, right? There's SAP leadership, there's Workday leadership that are now in charge over there, and they have been for a few years.
And they brought in a slew of folks, ex-Oracle folks as well in the sales organization. So quite a bit of tier one SaaS talent. Sales
totally. But along that talent line, right? They also launched a new ideal talent marketplace, which is powered by the Dayforce Skills Engine, and it really connects workers again to those based on their skills, their location, their availability. Really puts them in connection with the opportunities to certainly connect them to opportunities that they want to career aspirations and path.
Right.
They also mentioned that it's integrated into their on-demand shifts as well, where people can pick up gigs almost inside the organization and then get paid instantly by way of Dayforce Wallet, which I think is pretty cool. And really, let's be honest, right? It was the first native solution in the marketplace for HCM from an HCM provider for earned wage access. And they have really done a good job, I think, of weaving it into the experience across the platform. And payroll, as we know, we could talk for a while about Ceridian with payroll. That's very, very critical to them, right? Both the capability to process and create a great experience, but also the ability to cover the globe, right? They've made some great acquisitions, some really notable acquisitions that have made them quite formidable in the global payroll space as well. But anyway, back to the talent marketplace, employers can also with this can scale their workforce, fill skills, fill scheduling gaps, and really get them, do it all inside of Dayforce, right? With scheduling, with the marketplace, with the skills engine, and then of course payments through to the wallet. So,
absolutely.
A lot of integration.
Well, and I like to say for a later date, just put a pin in the idea of the Dayforce wallet and earned wage access. We've been talking about that now for a couple of years as different folks bring capabilities through, and Dayforce having it native is awesome. I just can't wait to find out, though, whether other countries and employees in other countries whether it's a demand and there's it's demand that's pulling this, or whether it's the providers that have figured out how to do this that are pushing it out.
I'd say it's actually probably the prior. I actually do think it's demand. And I also think it is, look, every country has different economic, and I've studied this a little bit, is why I'm going on this tangent. Every country has these dynamics, right, of economics, whether they, some companies do do a better job than others of creating livable wages and making sure people are not, living paycheck to paycheck with some of the issues that we're seeing in America. But those issues, I think, are certainly apparent in many other places. The UK, for example. Right. The other announcement, they've announced the wallet for the digital wallet, Dayforce wallet for UK.
Right.
And that I think is great, right? Because that is another, I would say, outside the US, probably one of the top growing markets for on-demand pay. Now, if you leave the UK and you start to go into, say, Holland or, not Amsterdam, the Netherlands and maybe France and others, it seems to be a bit less. And I think that's because they have a little bit different, maybe economic structure or whatever.
Right.
But I actually think that there's still a driver for this of on demand, right? Just the idea of on demand everything, I think is an expectation, particularly of the newer generations of people. That's what they've grown. Like, right, your kids, my kids, they've grown up with that as the norm. So the idea of being able to do things on demand, I think there's a generational element to that. But then I also think that you do have a geographical influence too, where like if you go and look in Asia Pac, there's a much more forward use of electronic payments, electronic money movement, cryptocurrencies, digital currencies. And so I think it's a perfect storm of we as human beings love the on-demand, right? We can get food to the door. We can get a movie on our phone. We can take a flight. Why can't we get pay, right? And we're all right with inflation and with what's going on. You're starting to see more and more research come out that, you know, 6-figure income households are struggling paycheck to paycheck. Savings are down. So I think this is where, like, all of these little things are adding to different reasons why people would engage with this, right?
Right.
And it's funny when you talk to people, Julie. I've studied this a lot with customers that have deployed it. I've studied it with people who some people just think it's crazy. Like, why would you do that? Right? Like, that's so, and I find it's generational, but I also find that it's just, it's almost the context of which they are putting it through. Like, oh, I would never do that because, right? Or, oh, I would love that because. And so I think it just depends on the use case, right? But there are a lot of use cases that are swirling around that are driving this for more reasons than just, I can't get to the next paycheck, right? It's other things too. So yeah, long-winded answer.
Well, congrats to Ceridian for putting it natively and making it widely available in the UK.
Yeah, and I would imagine they're gonna continue to roll out more countries. So just to give you a little bit of context for the uptake so far for Dayforce Wallet, right? 1,340 clients or employers across the U.S. and Canada have adopted. 45%. I think they said 45% of their customers, with 75% of those live. The average transaction about $28 per transaction being spent through Dayforce Wallet, and they are saying they're indicating that companies that are offering Dayforce Wallet are filling positions 15 times faster than companies that are not offering it. So clear impact, right? There's clear use, and there's a definitely impact to talent when you do this. And I think it's just one of those flexibility things that whether or not you think it's necessary or desired, there's someone and there is a desire, there is a market for this for sure. And I think it's going to grow. So
awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. Let's talk about org readiness. Are you ready for this?
Oh, totally ready for this.
I
know you're working on something. You're cooking something up, Pete, that got us thinking about this.
Yes. Let me tell you how we got here. So I've been working on a survey, and this is forthcoming. Shameless plug. I've been working on a survey of multinational payroll practitioners and leaders, right? And what we did was we worked with the GPMI and the APA to survey members and ask them about how impactful transformation is and how much value that they're getting out of payroll. So look for that in January. You'll see a webinar at the end of the month. I've got the report itself coming out, and then of course I'll be following that up with an article to kind of talk about it. But I want to pose a question to you, Julie, that we asked, and I want to get your sense of, first, before I tell you what the results were, what do you think the results were, and then let's talk about the results, and then I want to kind of segue into where we got on this topic and why I kind of questioned it is, and see where we go from there. Is that cool?
Sounds good. Let it rip.
Okay. So here's the question that we asked everyone. And I actually asked this not only in the survey, I also asked it live at the California Payroll Conference. You know, when you're at the events, you can use the app sometime, and you can pop a poll in. So I popped a poll in. I had over 100 people coming to my session. And I thought, hey, let me poll these people. And I asked them this question. And here was the question. We said, how confident are you that your executive leadership and corporate culture is fully aligned and invested in elevating payroll's value and impact within your organization, right?
Yep.
What do you think that the overall response was? And it was very similar between the poll I took, the sample poll, and those that we interviewed in this. So what do you think? What do you think about that question?
So, and the question is being asked of payroll practitioners, right? So
We're
payroll
asking,
leaders,
yes,
payroll leaders.
Let's say they could have been anyone, right? Taking this.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess, maybe as many as half or 60, let's say on the top end, 65% of leaders feel that they have alignment because it's their job to gain it, right? And I say that with a little bit of skepticism in my voice, right? Because I think sometimes we have folks that feel they have alignment that maybe don't when push comes to shove, right?
Yeah. And that's a lot, right? Think about the question, right? We're asking about the executive leaders, the corporate culture, and we're implying investment, right? I feel like that's three things, right? Are you physically and mentally dedicated to seeing this be better and raising its position? And by elevating, what we implied there is, are you focused on bringing payroll to where it should be to give you the value that you need, right?
Yeah.
Now, the answer, 54% said they lacked confidence. And I think that's a lot. Not surprising because I think payroll is still sort of, I don't want to call it neglected, but I still do think that there is a large population that thinks why is this so difficult? And I also think that there's a lot of organizations, I can name many of them, that good enough is good enough. I'm too scared to touch it. I'm too scared to deal with it.
Yeah.
Just leave it alone. Right.
Yeah.
And that gets me to the next question we asked. So what are your thoughts on that though, Julie?
Well, I was going to say the same thing. I still think that's an optimistic, based on who is being polled, right? I still think that even if over half lack that confidence, I think maybe the results could be a little bit more grim than that, because I think those are the folks who are going to be maybe the most optimistic about the alignment.
Yeah, possibly. Right. And now, so the other thing we asked how much value are you deriving from payroll, your operation? Like how much is it giving you back as an organization, right? 40% said they lack satisfaction. So that's kind of positive because that's the majority are happy, but almost half are struggling to get value out of payroll, right? So there's just there's a lot there, right? There's a lot of opportunity, I think, for executives to understand the value they're leaving on the table with payroll. And I think there's cultural pieces to that too. I think there is a cultural attitude that payroll is just cutting checks. That's all they're doing. They're just in the basement. They're cutting checks. How hard can this be? And that's the problem, right? There's not an understanding for the fact that it is not just a check cutting process. It is a value enabler that is absolutely vital it's holding together. It's the glue holding together all of your employee experience fundamentally. And if you blow it, you blow it, right?
Yeah. And I kind of wonder, if there might be a similar awakening coming for that payroll value driver that seems to be hitting now in the benefits space, right? So we've spent quite a number of years where benefits was just table stakes and you had to put benefits out there in order to be part of the employee value proposition. And now where talent just becomes so tight and so constrained, we're seeing all kinds of crazy, innovation in the benefit space. And I think maybe trailing not far behind will come the realization that there are similar, innovation opportunities and ways to create value drivers out of payroll as we're seeing, kind of take center stage in benefits and rewards today.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. It's all of it is becoming incredibly important. And we could talk about benefits, but what happens now that everyone is shifting away. Not everyone. A lot of people are shifting globally away from regular jobs and going to more gig and self-supported roles. Getting benefits for those people it's expensive and it's tough. And what happens, right? If you, because right now we're so coupled in America, benefits with employment. It's so synonymous that like, if you don't have an employer, like I know you can go buy it on the open market, but I personally have gone through that and it's very complicated.
Yeah.
And it's a little scary too, but that's for another subject. So this topic got me to thinking, right? Like, okay, so clearly some firms have transformed, they are transforming, but the majority of them are saying that they don't have confidence, right, in their leadership and their culture around payroll. So that got me to thinking, like, can you go through transformation from an org readiness perspective and make an investment? I don't even want to use the word invested. Make an investment that moves you forward, but not be invested culturally in what you're actually doing. In other words, I have this theory sometimes that payroll is one of those necessary evils that leaders will invest in because they have to, not because they look at it as a value driver or a value potential. It's more, I have to do this. I don't really buy in. So I kind of just sort of starting us there. Like, can you be invested, in investing, but not invested?
Yeah.
Right. And does that jeopardize you? Right. Like culturally, what does that mean?
Right. Well, okay. So I'm going to give you, I know this is the space where we're just going to start to toss some thoughts out there and debate, right? I think absolutely. In fact, I think that's the norm. That's been the norm for so long to be investing. And we see it because folks don't invest or change the technology until they've absolutely run the course of, a big depreciable, asset or technology or, end of life or end of support. And that's the stage at which we see people taking action, even beyond that stage, right?
Yeah.
When they
Yeah.
start to take action. And so it's born out of necessity and not out of, kind of this desire to proactively transform. Now, maybe COVID gave folks reason to see that they wanted to get a jump on things that were clearly going to fall apart eventually, right? So we saw a little bit of an uptick there. And now the question is, do we settle back in to investing out of necessity, or are we moving forward to seeing transformational value and reason to do things proactively?
Yeah, yeah, and can I tell you something observational? This is anecdotal, but observationally, in all of the time that I have interviewed customers, like not even just as an analyst, but as working in the industry, right, and working with people and listening. And especially as an analyst, though, if you have a chance to watch like a really truly modern organization's payroll leader talk, right? Iggy Zavoda is a phenomenal example, right? She's spoken many times about her work at Cliff Bar. But when you listen to her, one of the things I always take away from her is how invested their senior leadership was in, because she's not there now, she's at UKG, but how invested they were in the employee experience and payroll and all of the pieces and parts that go into having a great organization. And as you know, their culture is very, very famous for being, super, super supportive and positive. You listen to those payroll managers talk, you listen to those payroll leaders talk, and they have a different energy. They have a different mindset. It's a very infinite mindset. They have a very, you can tell they're supported. You can tell that they're empowered to actually do something better with payroll. Right. And then, but when you see other people talk about it, like when they're struggling in payroll, and it's a market difference. Right. And so, I think that just goes such a long way when you, as a payroll leader, an HR leader, it doesn't matter what tower this applies to. If you're able to look to your leadership and know they got my back, they're invested in this, and they're gonna help me, and they're gonna drive that attitude across the organization, that just brings payroll to a whole other level of opportunity. And I just think that's where organizations have to really embrace this stuff and get behind it versus just sort of like, okay, I'll do it, but I don't really like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think having there's the flip side of that as well, right? So knowing that your leadership or your peers have your back, it makes that easier to have that attitude, right? And to be infectiously, effective. But the flip side is true as well. You really have to have leaders that look at, or the leader of payroll or HR also has to be able to communicate and to persuade and shine kind of the value of payroll. It's easy to look at it. We might even have HR listenership that goes, okay, but payroll is kind of the grunt engine of the wheel, right?
No doubt.
And then there are finance and shared services and other parts of, the broad organization that looks at HR and might say the same thing. And so it's the leadership itself of payroll, of HR, has to be able to communicate and portray the importance of their own function in order for that to really work. And if both pieces aren't there, I think that's where folks just get nowhere with.
That is the theme of that blog I wrote, right? That is a top down, bottom up approach. You have to be you need those executives invested, the culture, but you have to walk the talk. You have to step up. You have to use that investment that you're given to champion change, to drive that insight, to be that advisor. You can't just operate the way payroll did before, right? You're right. Everybody's got to walk the talk. It's a team effort. So 100%, 100%.
Well, we came into this topic knowing that organizational readiness was going to be, it's such a broad topic that there's a million places we could go with it. And I was thinking, since, we've already had quite a bit of content out there today, that we might want to try to just take a few stabs at some tactical, some actionable things that folks can do as they're looking at a big payroll transformation or HR transformation, starting with stakeholders, since that's where we were at, right? And I'm gonna revert back to payroll and thinking about payroll transformation now, because I have long felt that payroll has the most complicated mix of stakeholders of any of the HR functions.
Yeah.
Not
They
only
answer to everyone.
that's right, they answer to everyone,
Yeah.
and it can be led by everyone, right? Sometimes it's owned by HR, sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's IT is running the show, sometimes it's a shared services, or it's not even centralized and it's just decentralized in operations around the globe. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I thought that it might be a good time to talk a little bit about just even the importance of starting conversations or having somebody that is looking at making the transformation in payroll that is familiar and conversant with other parts of the organization, right? And
Yeah.
so often that doesn't
Totally.
happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've both been in these, right? You're sitting in these rooms with 50 people, representatives from all over the business, like trying to make these decisions. And it's fascinating to me how they get everyone on the same page. They don't, but they got to get most of them. So yeah, it's interesting.
That's right. And the way that you approach the transformation, or even, getting approvals that are necessary to move things forward at different key points in the project, sometimes just frankly depends on the balance of power in your organization and who's driving who, right? And where you get the money from and where you have to go to get, processes approvals or third party support. It's so varied, and it's something that's so complex, and I really feel like it's misunderstood, or doesn't get the emphasis that it needs in order to really make sure that you can do more than talk to some vendors and figure out who your preferred one is, right? That's the easy part.
Yeah, right. You're shaping your future. It's definitely more than just a buying procedure, for sure. It's incredible. And yeah, I wonder sometimes, like when firms go into this, are they going into it with the right intentions? And I'm not saying like they're going in going, oh, let's just do something, right? No, I think they go in, with the understanding of like, hey, we're trying to solve this or that problem, but are they looking at it in the context of like a vision?
Yeah.
A vision for, does the leadership have a vision for how HR should and can support it? Because every organization is different. They have different needs from HR. And I think that's really critical. Part of the buy-in is them having, the senior leadership having a vision for how they would like to see HR supporting and engaging talent and helping them execute. So yeah, it's all really, really amazing stuff. Complicated stuff. Yeah.
Have you seen, it makes me think, Pete, when you see global process owners, right? That was kind of the foundational, that's the premise of bringing in global process owners, is to have somebody that's thinking about the vision from that particular dimension. And yet, if they don't own any part of the actual operations themselves, they don't have the budgetary power. They don't own the FTE. Yeah, there's no skin in the game. And so they can vision all they want. But if you have no skin in the game, it's very hard to drive decisions or to make things happen. I'm imagining you've seen that as well.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, you've got some stakeholders that are more invested in others. And I'll tell you, I've seen people leave. I've seen people leave an organization because they didn't agree. Whether not that they didn't want to see change, some do, some don't want to see change, and some do leave for that reason. But I have seen some senior folks leave an organization because of it and say it's just not what I don't believe in this, or I don't care about it. And I think that's the best. That's for the best, right? Don't be in the way, And yeah, so where do you go from here, Julia? Like how do you get this alignment maybe going and get your stakeholders kind of in the right direction?
Yeah, well, I think that step number one is to reach out and engage the stakeholders from each domain. And I don't think that's a natural step internally, because you're going to take your lead, your transformation lead, from somewhere in the organization. Yeah. And so if they're coming from payroll or from finance or from procurement, their inclination is going to be to approach the project or the program from that perspective, and to minimize the importance of not just reaching out and informing stakeholders, but making sure that they understand who's at the helm of, some of their peer organizations, and what is their interest and what are their priorities, what's the timing and what's the wins, so that they know how to, I won't say manipulate, but that there's an element of that, right? They know how to navigate really across the peer organization. And at first it's not obvious, because you start maybe with, with how you yourself want to procure, or what her delivery model is. but you're not going to get very far if you're not able to know who the other players are and to get them aligned and to get them marching to the same drum.
Yeah. And I think that sometimes, or a lot of times, organizations maybe don't have the skill set to do that themselves. That's where I think a lot of the consulting, like you do, and I know the professional services that we do, come in very, very handy, helping companies figure out, are you ready for this, right? Are your processes ready? Are you ready? Do you have the right team and skills? Do you have the right retained team? Right? That might be a whole other episode, but yeah,
That's
I mean,
right.
just, sometimes and most times I'd say firms need help, right? That this is not your core work. And I think you do have to have those champions that are going to, be all in and really help push it across, because you're right. I think the theme of what you were talking about just a little while ago is what's in it for me, right?
Yeah,
if I'm a leader, and hopefully that's very obvious and they're bought into the company's goals, but not always, right? And so, it's very challenging.
And I think I have just one other dimension, maybe, as we talk about something actionable. So action number one, reach out and make sure you're proficient in who those stakeholders are, and start to get some dialogue going. But the second one really touches on understanding the magnitude of funding, for example. There's and setting expectations early around the business case for change. And why the change is going to be needed. Again, these things have been coming at end of life for as long as I can remember, really. And so being able to articulate that, we can't wait 3 years for all of these other groups, priorities to go through, because we're putting ourselves at significant risk. Of just being able to pay our talent, right? And so being able to articulate that risk, the risk of do nothing, and then being able to really estimate and set expectations around funding and investment that requires sometimes multi-year planning. And that's a big task as well. And it's not usually the first thing we think about when we're worried about getting a compliance system and making sure that we can handle hourly complexities and union workers and all the things that we have to worry about doing right.
And the merger that we just did two weeks ago, now we have to wedge into our plans that nobody told us about. You know what I mean? Like that, is that always the way, right? It's always like that. So yeah.
Well, I hope at least out of this teaser on org readiness, we have 2 actionable things that we could share with folks. And I doubt this will be the last time that we talk about it.
Yeah. And, I noticed you mentioned too about the org readiness starting at the top, right? I really like that. I don't think we said that here, but maybe earlier. That's a really great point. That I think is, again, back to that whole buy-in, right? Like, I think executives need to be more, visionary about what they want their HR to be. And even if you're not the CHRO, I think you still should have a vision as the CEO of how you want your human beings to, your fellow humans to be treated, and how you want things to be done culturally. And I think that point of having that point of view is the start to buying in and beginning to say, hey, how do I bring this to life? And I think that's where the org readiness can get driven. When you've got your senior leaders energized, it often gets other people energized.
Absolutely.
To get on board. But then again, you've always got those folks that are going to try to carve out their empire, right? I used to say in managed services, right? We're selling Thanksgiving to turkeys in a lot of ways, but the ultimate goal is that they're going to, come away in a better state, and that, their retained organization is going to move forward and hopefully fuel their vision if they have one, and hopefully have a better future. So. All awesome. Good stuff, right? Yeah.
Cool way to work in turkeys right around the.
Fits perfectly for Thanksgiving. You're right.
Awesome. Well, thanks for another great chat. And I think we'll hope to find everybody just in a few short weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy holidays, everyone. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.